off we go.
Perfect.
Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA USA. IPA USA is a USA affiliate of the International Play Association. And as part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats. And these are conversations with people who are just as passionate about play as we are. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm the president of IPA USA. With me on the porch is Cameron Sprague. Cameron, did I say your last name right?
Yes, you did. You did.
Oh, I'm starting off really well. Cameron's been working with children and young people for over 25 years. You do not look that old. Since his start in the American summer camp industry. Working in the summer camp industry not only led him to completing his Bachelor's of Science in Outdoor Education, but also to meeting with his wife, Jenny, and his eventual immigration to the UK in 2007. In the UK, Cameron continued his studies to become a fully qualified early years manager, which you'll have to describe for us. In 2014, Cameron started his role as a team leader for, is it Stramash? Stramash, thank you. Yeah. Establishing an outdoor nursery in Fort William from the bare field to the vibrant nursery space it is today. And I am so excited I get to visit it during the World Conference. Since 2020, he's taken on the responsibility of overseeing the ever-growing training program for Stramash, right? Stramash?
Stramash, but you're
Stramash. What is wrong with me? Speaking and delivering around Scotland as he promotes place-based learning and advocates for child-led outdoor play. So other than totally messing up the name of it, I'll put your website and everything in the YouTube show stuff and in Facebook. But Cameron's going to talk to us today about risky play. What are we actually risking? Because I think this is such an important topic for us to explore.
Yeah, well, it's funny because just when we were talking about me coming on and thinking about things I wanted to talk about, there's that quote by Lady Allen of Hurtwood, better a broken bone than a broken spirit. And so Stramash uses a risk-benefit approach to our settings, which many play-based workers do. But, and we do that to show people outside of our organizations and to ourselves, like, this is why we're doing these things. These are the benefits for our children that will come out of it. But I was almost wondering, like, for people that are doubtful of risky play, do we need to put more of a focus that actually, you know what we're risking by not allowing children to do these things? We're risking their, independence and their self-confidence, their self-esteem, and that, there's so much physically, cognitively, emotionally that comes out of risky play. So it's more than just like, great, we should do it. It's like we're actually harming our children inadvertently in most cases by wrapping them in cotton wool and not allowing them to experience risk.
Well, and I think the thing that I have found in watching children in the US in different programs is when we don't allow them to take that risky play, they're not figuring out where their body is in space. So they don't know if they've climbed too high, or they don't know, they don't have that internal sort of assessment. I just remember climbing trees as a child, and we had pecan trees. I could climb. And there was a point where I said to myself, I'm too high and I need to go down some. But I learned that because I climbed. I didn't learn that because someone said, you're too high, come down, right? So I had this internal sort of sense. And if we don't allow children to take those risks, they're not developing that. It's what I worry about.
Yeah, I think it's, I always describe it in training, like you need to have experiences where you have that icy, oh crap feeling in your stomach. Because if you don't have those in your formative years, when you come up to being a teenager and an adult, that's when they start getting into bother because they're gonna eventually be in a situation that's risky and doing things. And you know, if you don't have that connection within your body, you're just not gonna recognize what's going on, and then you're gonna do something silly. You know?
And when they're smaller, they don't have as far to fall. So we just need to get over it. And falling is part of life, right? And children really need to get that internal sense. I like how you said it's in your belly. It is in your belly. Sometimes as an adult now, I'll get that, oh crap, you shouldn't jump off that.
Yeah,
Sit
absolutely.
down and down.
It's funny. There's an educational consultant in the UK, Catherine Solly, she's amazing, and I had her guest on Puddle Patter, which is a similar thing that I do for Stramash. And in it, she was talking about the most dangerous thing you'll do in your life is learn how to walk. You know, you're going to fall a million times learning how to walk over and over and over and again. And there's not one adult in the world who'll say, whoa, stop that child from trying to learn how to walk. We cannot allow them to walk. That is way too dangerous. And I'll never forget that, because it's, that's what you're saying. It's that moment of, you know, they can walk now, then it's, we got to now wrap them in the bubble wrap and don't allow them to now climb as high as they can, run as fast as they can, be as strong as they possibly can, because we're putting fear into them.
Yeah, exactly. And so what else are we risking if we're not allowing them that independence and that internal moment, or the ability to build that confidence and to be able to challenge themselves? I mean, you know, reading is risky, right? So if we want them to feel comfortable taking risks, they better have had some practice with risks.
Absolutely. And I think, like, well, if listeners haven't read Angela Hanscom's book, Balanced and Barefoot, they absolutely should, because I think it's an amazing book. And she just talks so much about that, your internal body needing to be developed at a young age. So that's your core muscles and everything else. And as humans, we are not designed to just work on our fine motor with our fingers. We're designed to develop our bodies holistically. And that, you know, does involve climbing things, picking heavy things up, moving really fast, all these kind of things where your muscles are working in conjunction. And it's almost like that bit, like if you don't build your body to be ready to learn, because, you know, basically your sense of balance helps send, you know, signals throughout your body, which means taking in information, and things like that. Like, you're not going to actually be ready to learn in any situation, let alone in school or in a classroom. And there's so many children that are, you know, they're just sitting all day and playing on tablets and watching screens, and then they go to school and they're being marked as, you know, oh, they have ADHD because all they do is fidget, and they can't sit and they can't move and they don't have concentration. But actually, their bodies just physically aren't ready to do it yet. And that's one of the risks.
Yes, it's a huge piece of development that, you know, I always like to talk about the dispositions, right? The approaches to learning. If you're not curious, if you don't have an opportunity to explore and make discoveries, then learning is not, or even play is not going to be pleasurable, and you're not going to repeat it. And if you repeat things over and over, you master them. And so it, you know, sometimes children don't feel safe. Well, if you don't feel safe, you can't be curious. And sometimes they don't feel safe because of what we've done to them in how we've told them, oh, be careful, don't fall. Oh, you can't do that, you might fall and hurt yourself. So sometimes we inhibit that development because we're so freaked out about it. So how do we get over that, Cameron? How can you describe some of the things in your school that I remember I saw the video of the 2-year-old or 2.5-year-old climbing up to this very tall treehouse. Very tall, and she was 5, right? So can you describe a little bit about how you bring in those opportunities for children to risk?
Yeah, so I guess I don't know if you've heard of are aware of the work of Ellen Sandsetter and her risky play types, work in risky play types. So we do think about those a lot in terms of the activities we offer. So we have lots of opportunities for children to experience speed. So we offer like bounce bikes and things like that are available to our youngest children and on. And the majority of my site's on a hill, so they have some good speed that they can get going, and lots of things they can make ramps and things like that out of. But yeah, that they can access whenever they want. We have lots of things with height. So yes, we do have play structures that are 10 feet off the ground for children to climb. And for some people that is really scary, but I guess what I should say is that we also are very consistent as a staff team in that we don't put children into anything. So, you know, even if one of our youngest children asked us to put them into a swing, we wouldn't do it, because we want them to be able to develop their physical body to be able to access that equipment appropriately for when they're ready, and also for them to problem solve how they can do it. Because if their legs are too short to get to that swing, they're going to figure out a way to get up there if they really want to. And that's where creativity and all those things come out of. But because we have those consistent rules, when children get into things, they have the capabilities to get down, because we have not put them up there. They've got up there themselves. So like the play structure you're referring to, I have had a 20-month-old climb a 9.5-foot rope ladder, but it took him 3 months to do it. And yeah, and it's
he went up 2 or 3 pieces, and then he came back down. Then he went up 2 or 3, 4 pieces. It's that challenge.
Yeah,
That,
and if we just stepped in, we would have took away that whole, you know, because when he accomplished that, it was like amazing, and we had been there for the whole ride, and that's where it could have all fallen down. Because if, you know, you had been doing all that good work with him for 2.5 months, and then I just rocked up and said, "Oh, I'll pick you up," we just it's gone in an instant. You know, all the hard work he did, all the trial and error, all the different strategies he developed into getting up those rungs so he felt secure, gone in a second, because an adult stepped in, you know, really under the premises of being, I'm going to make sure you're safe, you know, but really you took that all away from him.
Destroyed all that discovery away from him.
But even the self-esteem boost, the confidence, everything that came out of that process, you destroyed it in a second.
You don't think I can do it, so now you're helping me, right? So that's that. He's like, oh, they think I'm going to fall. They think I'm going to hurt myself. And as a child, that would have been a self-fulfilling thing for me. I probably would have fallen. So when we think about the challenges that we face as adults in not stepping in and not putting children, you know, I always tell teachers, on the playground, if you put a child on a platform and they didn't get there themselves, the possibility of them falling is much more high than if you allow them to do it on their own. If you only let them go up the slide through the steps and not up the slide, then you're robbing them of opportunities to learn how their body feels in different ways of doing things. And I think that is so hard for us in the US because we're such a fearful society and we want to protect children instead of protecting childhood. And so I think that's our issue, is that we're so overprotective that risky play sounds too frightening. They're afraid they're going to get sued. They're afraid. And you know, I always say to them, if you're in ratio, if you have checked for hazards like nails sticking up out of boards, and you're on the playground and you're properly in ratio, you're not going to get sued. So we need to let that go, let that fear go.
Especially in the UK, like the main difference between like an educational establishment's playground and a playground out in the town is that the difference is it's supervised versus unsupervised. So an unsupervised playground has to have much different regulations than a supervised one, because the difference is there's not adults there to watch, like you said, to be in ratio. And I think that the thing that's really tricky with risk in that is I think one of the hurdles people need to kind of recognize with themselves is that risk, the perception of risk is a very personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the examples I always give in training is that, so when I did summer camps, which I worked at a summer camp for 11 summers, and I ran ropes course elements for several summers, which included a zip line, which had a platform that was about 40 feet in the air that you had to climb up to, and you would be on belay, and then you'd be hooked off and put onto the zip line. Now, the absolute most difficult person in all my time at camp to put through that zip line was my now wife. She was petrified of heights, and she absolutely was pushing her limits, but she got to the top of the platform and I needed her to go against the tree so I could unhook her from the belay and hook her into the zip line. But she froze at the end of the platform, wouldn't move, and the zip line wouldn't physically, I couldn't do it. I couldn't unhook her from the belay for where she was. And 20 minutes of chat, please step back, I'll do it, and she's like, I can't move, I can't do it. So I had to unhook myself from the tree. So I was floating 40 feet in the air, which
boy.
isn't best practice, but I felt very safe, and there was no way I was getting her through it any other way. So I unhooked her and hooked her, and at the time, if she had known that, she would have killed me. But I felt okay. Now we flip it to 1 year over once living here. We went for her birthday mountain biking. Now she had our son, who was young at the time, on a tag along, which was like an attachment to her mountain bike, bombing down mountain bike trails so fast. And I'm at the back like, freaking out, totally scared. And that's, two different risky activities that we both have very different perceptions of. But if she was very confident and capable with what she was doing on the mountain bike with our son on the back. But it would have been so easy for somebody to step in and say, you shouldn't be doing that. But, she demonstrated over a whole weekend. She was absolutely confident to do it, and he was fine.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same for me in the tree. I was confident and capable of doing that. But it's just like second nature for adults to step in to a child and say, you shouldn't be doing that. That is too risky. But
and it's typically based on some experience that we had as children, right? Oh, I remember falling off my bike, so you shouldn't be pedaling that fast. Or I just think of all the times I grew up on 5 acres, right? So, and I had horses, and my mother had no idea where I was.
Yeah.
No idea. I would hop on my horse, and I didn't wear saddles. I was bareback. I hopped on that horse, and he was a quarter horse, and he was fast. And so we would just head through the orchards, because I grew up in South Texas where there's fruit orchards. We would head through those orchards, and he would be, I was flying. There was a cushion of air between me and the horse because we were going so fast. My mother had no idea where I was. No idea. For hours I was out. We were running. Hours. And I would come home, and sometimes I would have tree branches in my hair, and she'd say, oh, did you take a fall? I said, yeah, it was okay though. And so that sort of, I had a wonderful mom who would just say, go outside and play, right? And that's what I did all the time. But not everybody has had that experience. But boy, I took lots of risks, but I felt confident enough that I could handle them. But you don't get that unless you allow children to take risks. So that, I think, is the most important thing. It
is, because you cannot be on their back for their whole life. So at what point do you say it's okay? So is it better that we wrap them in cotton wool and wait till they're a teenager and say, all right, you're fine now, you're old enough, you go? Or do we put them in environments that allow them to take risks at their wants, and they're ready, that is supervised by supportive adults? And that to me is just a no-brainer.
And if we can give teachers some tools other than jumping in. Jill was talking about this about the play worker sort of philosophy. Instead of like jumping in, you need to be saying, why do I feel like I need to jump in? You need to be reflecting on on your own stuff, because it's our stuff that gets in our way, right? Whatever that stuff is. And you're right, it's different for every person. You know, some people may be terrified of dogs because they had a horrible experience with a dog when they were little. So they may not want, if a dog happens to come to school for a visit as a pet, they may be flipping out, which makes other children afraid of dogs, even though it's their stuff. And so I do think if you feel like this is too dangerous in something that a child is doing, you really need to ask yourself, where's that coming from? It's kind of like the same thing we do in getting people to recognize stereotypes and bias. That horrible thing that just flew through your head. Think about that. Where did that come from? And then you can start to deal with it. But the same thing with this fear stuff. We have to reflect on why it scares us so much.
Absolutely.
And not scare the child while we're reflecting on it.
Yeah, you know, it's such a common thing to scream, "Be careful" at someone and then scare them half to death so they fall off what they're on, because, you know, they're now panicked. What happened? What
happened? You're screaming their name. Stop that. Don't climb so high. And they're like, what? And then they fall. And then we're like, see, I told you shouldn't have. Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
So I do think we have a lot of stuff that we have to deal with as educators. But I really think that if we can focus on valuing the child's experience instead of worrying about our own feelings toward it, it will help us allow them to take more risk. And you don't have to have them climb. How tall is the rope ladder?
I think it's 9.5 feet.
9.5 feet tall. You don't have to start with that.
No, and I definitely didn't start with that on day one. And, you know, we're about to put in, hopefully it'll be done before you come, but a bridge that will have a high up bit that kids can climb up to and then jump off onto crash mats. And, you know, so that's going to have some heights. But I think what my fear is that I don't keep providing challenge and progression for our children. So then you're capping their capabilities. I guess just one other thing that is really powerful about risky play, and people maybe don't always make the connection with, is that it's an amazing tool to help children connect their body with emotions. You know, I've seen so many places that you go in and they have the children all sat in a circle, and then they've got these laminated, this is a happy face and this is a sad face. And you see, but it's so, you know, if a child's on a rope ladder and they're feeling nervous, and you can see that in them, and you can say, I can see, Deb, that you're feeling nervous. Can you feel that in your body? Let's take a deep breath. Yeah, take a minute, pause. It's okay. Take a deep breath. Like, then you're like giving them what actually the word for what they're feeling in their body, and you're giving them a coping strategy to deal with it. And that is so much more powerful than, you know, a little laminated face saying,
oh yeah,
that's sad, that's happy.
How are you feeling today? Yes. So feeling the real emotions and helping them make that connection. And you can do that when you're outside. So talk about children get there at what time?
In the morning. The earliest they come is 8:30 in the morning currently.
Okay. And they're outside. I know some of your playgrounds or some of your areas have structures.
Yes. Yeah.
But how often do you use those structures?
So what Stramash say is that we're a fully immersive outdoor program, and that over the course of the year, we spend 90% of our time outdoors.
There you go.
So if it's February and it's -5, there will be days when children spend time in an indoor spaces for 6 hours, 5 hours, just depending on what they need in their age. And more their personal, what they need, I guess, but there's no one that's never spent at least part of their day outside every day that we've been open since 2014, apart from one, and that's because it was lightning all day. So it was hippies.
You can't
We're
go
not
out there
crazy.
then. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So they're outside every day for the whole time that you're open year round, or however long you're open in the year. 90% of the time they're outside almost all the time.
Yeah.
And they're out there in rain, in snow, in sleet, in wind.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's muddy.
It's often muddy because we are in Fort William, which is the rainiest part of the UK, which is kind of known for rains. So yeah, we can be muddy.
And any animals on the property yet?
Yes, we have a rabbit
Oh,
named Apple, and then we also have hens and a cockerel as well that free roam during the day.
nice. Lovely. And so I'm really so excited to come. And um the families, and you're open until like 5:30.
Yes. Yep.
So it's a full day. And how
We
many
also are,
children?
yeah, some children do half days, but some, yeah, so there's half days and full days and a short day that mimics the school day as well. So
Mhm.
there's like different choices. Yeah.
And how many children?
At one time 34 currently, but next week we have some builder designers that we're hoping to work with that are going to look to redo our shelters and
Mhm.
hopefully add another one, and then we'll be increasing our program once that all goes through. So hopefully like within a year and a half we'll be bigger, more children.
And
Yeah.
and the families come from around where you are.
Yeah, but because of the nature of our program, we've had people travel from very far away, like 2 hours to come to us. Yeah,
That's
so it's quite
lovely.
a commitment. Yeah,
And I think the other piece that, I mean, in London, UK has tons of adventure playgrounds, and each one of them has their own character. Maynell was on one of the IPA World Seminars last Wednesday, or this last Wednesday, and they had three. I think we had three adventure playgrounds. We had one in Japan, one in Germany, and one in where Maynell is, a couple of hours away from London. And each one is unique and each one is different. And that's the beauty of them, right? That they're not
yeah,
cookie cutter places. But and so I have pictures and videos that I'm actually putting into a presentation for my students in college so that they can see what it looks like and what's possible. Um, and the other thing is that the president of IPA World is starting an interest group on adventure playgrounds.
interesting.
Yeah, so because there was so much interest from everyone who was on it. So, I think that we have adventure playgrounds. I mean, Jill Wood, who was just on, has one, right? We have adventure playgrounds in the US, but we don't have, and the ones that we have are great ones. They're very much in the play worker focus, right? So that the adult isn't there to interfere. The adult is there if a child needs them, but not to control them, right?
Yeah,
Um, and so I think that may help us get rid of some of these fears if they can see it and they can understand why it's so important. So this has been fabulous, Cameron. Before we close out, do you have any 3 or 4 minutes of final comments or
uh,
anything you want to close with?
well, I think it's just start. I would say if you're worried about risky play, really small, even things like fire, you can do, you could have a fire pit and do a big fire, but if you're nervous and that's something that you're anxious about doing yourself, you can start really small. You can buy little mess tins that is lighting a twigs in, and it's enough to roast a marshmallow, but that's a fire experience that can start very small, very controlled, and you can put it out very quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't need, first day to be 9.5 rope ladders and all those kind of things. It doesn't have to be that way. And I guess what I always say within my own training is if you're undertaking risky play as a setting, you can only go as fast as the slowest person is ready, because it's really unfair for someone to come in and say, okay, the children are now allowed to climb 60 feet up the trees, and then there's people that are panicking that they have to take part in facilitating that, where it's better that you do it as a journey together as a community, where you can have lots of conversation, see the benefits in the children, and then let your practice evolve over time rather than just try to be all singing and all dancing from that first
Well,
day.
and I think the statement that you made right now, your challenge is to find new challenges for them to meet them where they are developmentally because they've come so far. And I think that is the beauty and what I can't wait to see.
Yeah.
So
Can't wait
Cameron,
to
thanks so
have you
much.
here.
Oh, I'm so excited. So hold tight while I close this out. Don't go anywhere. So to learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website. Up in that top right-hand corner, you can be a friend on our Facebook page. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Instagram. And magically, every Monday morning, a new Porch Play Chat will appear in your feed. So until next time, keep on playing.